Welcome back to Overwatch League Network. I'll be your host, Spyder, and this video is your crash course in playing as, with, or against Ashe when she releases in competitive. Let's get right to it. So first, the most important part of Ashe's kit, her gun, the Viper. By now, everyone pretty much knows how it works, but quickly, the primary fire shoots rapidly with little downtime between the shots, but does have increasing spread. And then aiming down the sights with the secondary fire slows the rate of fire, but increases the damage and fall off range and has no spread. Deciding when to ADS and when to hip fire is what will make or break you as an Ashe player. In my experience, it comes down to the matchups and map, but how I approach it is, can I kill them with a hip shot? If yes, use that. If not, then go to scope. This led me to being scoped almost 70% of the time. Remember, Ashe can two-shot any 200 HP hero with a quick hip fire body shot and an ADS headshot. If you do it in this particular order, the time to kill is ridiculously low. The biggest tip I can give you, though, is slam that reload button. Ashe has the longest reload in the game from empty to full, being just over about 4 seconds, but being able to piecemeal it here and there and get a few bullets in during downtime will make sure that you almost never run out of bullets. So any bit of downtime, make sure you're reloading. That was too high. They have an Ashe that's back there. Was that your phone? Yeah. Next, we'll move on to the dynamite. First up, you should almost use the dynamite always on cooldown. In my experience, if you can hit at least one person with it, it's generally worth it. But look for opportunities to exploit grouped up enemies for sure. Outside of Moira and Ana with the grenade, healers will struggle to keep up with this damage. With that, if you're feeling cocky, go for the spawn door dynamite. This can lead to a huge ult advantage early in the game, especially if the enemy team is not paying attention. Just make sure you don't put yourself in too much danger doing so. Finally, dynamite is your strongest tool to secure kills when enemies are retreating. With good game sense and a little practice, you can use it to secure some easy kills because most people round a corner and wait for a heal because they think they are safe. This will change over time, but for now, make sure you're exploiting it. I guess we'll throw in a little tidbit, a well-known fact, but I'll repeat it anyway. If you throw the dynamite and don't move your mouse, you can use the primary fire to detonate it without aiming or doing anything. It's perfect for those close to mid-range fights. Okay, let's talk about Ashe's final normal ability, the coach gun. It's Ashe's main source of mobility, but more so, it's your main way to escape. While doing 90 damage at point-blank range may seem like an effective way to finish off kills, this ability is better saved for emergencies most of the time. Abuse it to gain advantages you would normally not have against matchups like Tracer and Brig, or if you get booped by a Pharah and Lucio. Also, when using the coach gun to knock someone away, make sure you're always trying to go for the scoped shot. It may take some practice, but it's a good way to help your survivability if you can pump some damage into whoever was chasing after you. It may dissuade them from chasing you further. Okay, what about Bob? Well, Bob's actually one of the easier ultimates to use, as long as you know some of the key factors and what to look for. Sending Bob into a group of enemy fire is a sure way to waste him and get him killed. Tisk tisk. Instead, you should be looking for enemies who are mispositioned or look to set up crossfire or flank routes. I had the most success with Bob when positioning him to create the crossfire, forcing enemy teams to either move or face increased pressure from multiple sides. Another tip I found is Bob creates a lot of distraction for your team, so using him in conjunction with some other ults, like High Noon, can lead to some pretty great results. Finally, you can use Bob as an intended function of a bodyguard. You can slam him against a wall and then stand behind him and use him as that good old glorious meat shield. Oh well, I'm sorry, Bob. Let's talk about Bob and his matchup with tanks for a minute. Bob is great to throw directly at a Reinhardt. This will either force the Reinhardt to charge or take damage from both sides, as when Bob hits a Reinhardt, he throws him up and then positions behind the Reinhardt. Bob is neutral against Winston. You probably shouldn't throw him at the Winston, but he can be there to distract and dissuade the Winston from diving your backline. Honestly, if the enemy team is running a Winston, I would just throw Bob at the backline and let him do some work there. Finally, Orisa. Bob is bad against Orisa. You should almost never throw Bob directly at Orisa, because Orisa can fortify and then pop her shield, thus pretty much eliminating any advantage Bob would have given you. So if you are facing an Orisa, position him so that he sets up a crossfire. This will force the Orisa to make a hard choice on where she wants to position the shield, while also trying to protect her team, leaving pretty much one of the sides vulnerable. And as a last note, if you didn't know already, Bob will run for a very long distance, and he will run off cliffs. It's almost a rite of passage to send him off a cliff or into Ilios well. Now, let's talk about playing with an Ashe, as many of you will likely have to do when she first enters comp and becomes the new hotness. Ashe is a lot like McCree, and she will need support to function and do her job well. While not as dependent as McCree, the healer needs to keep an eye out on Ashe to help her if she gets dove or in trouble, and will honestly make or break the effectiveness of her doing damage. Like McCree, with a little help, Ashe can put out a lot of damage to scare off a lot of initiations. Winston should look to counter dive when playing with an Ashe, as I had a lot of success waiting for our Ashe to get dove on, helping her out, and then going aggro and counter diving. This works well with D.Va also. Just make sure your main tank knows that you're babysitting Ashe. Okay. You're probably thinking, dive, who plays dive anymore? So let's get this out of the way. Let's talk about goats. While not optimal, Ashe can fit into a soft goats comp. We've had the most success running her instead of the third healer, typically opting out for the Moira and Lucio or the Moira Brig, depending on the map. Though we did have some success with the Moira Zen on some maps. Finally, if you do get to play some dive comps, treat Ashe like you would a Pharah. Let her initiate the fight with some good damage, and then the dive heroes such as Tracer, Genji, or Sombra can go in and clean up the kills. But that leads us to playing against Ashe. Honestly, I hate to say it, but Moira Goats is a good answer to Ashe, as Dynamite can put out a lot of damage against this comp, but they move so fast and Moira heals so much and they hit so hard, it really doesn't matter. The Ashe Goats comp I mentioned above seem to win out more often than not versus other variations of Goats I faced, but Moira was the one that gave me the most trouble. But moving beyond Goats, playing dive-heavy comps with Winston, D.Va, or Hammond is a good way to limit Ashe's influence on the match. As far as matchups go against other heroes, Ashe is neutral on a lot of them, coming down to individual player skill, with what I would consider her only true counter outside of tanks being Widowmaker. With the range Widow can keep, she has the advantage on most maps. Just don't let the Ashe close the distance, as mid to close range, Ashe can beat out most non-AOW level Widows. I hope this video helped you out with whatever your interaction with Ashe is going to be when she enters competitive. If you liked it, be sure to let us know. As always, hit the subscribe and the bell so you're always up to date on all of our great content. See you next time.